And on today's podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Dana L. Cox. How are you today, Dana?
I'm great, David. How are you?
Wonderful. So let's get this started. So where are you right now on planet Earth?
On planet Earth, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, in the US.
Okay, St. Louis, Missouri. Sell it. If I was going to move there now tomorrow, or I'm moving for a job or going on holiday, what's the most wonderful thing about where you live?
So I'm not originally from here, but this is my second time living here. So obviously I must have liked it to come back. One of the things I would say about St. Louis is the Midwest people are really just very inviting people. There's great barbecue here in St. Louis, Missouri, and lots of live music opportunities. On any given night, you can find any type of live music, any genre of music. There is some place playing it, a band, something that's happening, an artist in town. I remember going out one night and there was like 28 different live music events happening that one night. So if you like live music, definitely a great place to be. Lots of outdoor activities. If you have small children, the zoo is free. There's an outdoor theater where they actually have some free seats, but it's first come, first served basis, and they do a lot of different large productions. So it's a great place if you're an outdoors person. So yeah, and great weather. It does get a little cold in the winter, but not crazy cold like Wisconsin and Switzerland or anything like that. But it does get a little cold.
What's cold? So give us like, are we talking really chilly jumpers or kind of mild in the terms of
Kind
Fahrenheit
of mild. Yeah,
60s
kind of mild.
70s?
I'm from a place called, Wisconsin where we're called the frozen tundra, where it gets like sub-zero. So so when I moved here, I, threw away my boots and got rid of my snowsuit, if you will.
Right,
But we do get snow, just not crazy amounts of snow.
right.
Um,
And what's I mean in terms of the
Temperature
music,
wise,
what
music.
music do you like? I mean, you were saying there's like 28 bands maybe on one night or what type of music? What's Dana's vibes?
So I definitely am more of a R&B jazz type of girl. But there are some country artists that I do like. So yeah, I mean, I like all types of music, very eclectic music listener, indie, rock. It just depends on what mood I'm in.
And it's you've given it a wonderful review. So if anybody's listening to this, they cannot wait to visit your hometown of Missouri. I think they'd be over the moon and delighted. So well done. So can you tell listeners a little bit more about yourself? So kind of go back, go back to the beginning before we kind of branch out into the really nitty gritty
Mhm.
stuff you're doing now in your books. So start from even go back to high school.
Oh, high school.
Yes. So what was Dana like in high school, and why do you think what happened in high school and the later years kind of made you into the person you are now?
In high school, I think I was very similar to who I am today. I was very active in high school. I played a lot of sports. So I played volleyball. I did track and field. For a couple of years, I was like one of the managers of the boys basketball teams, uh, doing the stats and video and all of that kind of stuff until the one game that was like a really big game and I forgot to press record. Then I was no longer manager for the boys basketball.
Okay. Oh dear.
Oh dear, they had no film to watch.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no, that was not a good day. But it was a great game. I got stuck in watching it. But I was studious. I would say I was a studious student. Definitely in honors classes, high functioning in my classes and things of that nature. Had a lot of friends, but the community was small. But that was who I was. Definitely being a leader on my sports teams and things of that nature were a big part of me developing leadership skills and things of that nature.
And did it come to you naturally, or was any family members or anybody specifically that kind of you looked up to yourself that kind of gave you that leadership vibe?
I would like to. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and so I pretty much had an old soul. I think just because of the nature of who I was around, I watched them, lead the household and the family and things of that nature. So I do think that a lot of that, I was mimicking what I saw from my grandparents and just how to be. But they taught me a lot of things very early on, where I knew how to cook things, and to the point where I personally thought I didn't need supervision. I really still needed supervision, David.
You
I,
weren't like four
I
years of age, were you? Like, I mean,
I was five. Let me
or
just
five.
say this.
Okay,
I was five,
that's okay.
and I I decided I was going to cook myself a BLT sandwich.
Oh, nice.
It was not a good decision on my part as a 5-year-old.
Right.
Hence, the kitchen curtains went up in flames.
Okay.
And I learned very quickly, you do not put water on a grease fire.
No.
But that was probably not the lesson I should have learned at the age of 5, but it was a very valuable lesson that I learned. And then I got the punishment to make me remember I need supervision when in the kitchen.
But was it loving punishment? I mean, was it kind of like so you could, rather than kind of how did you say beating you to the stick, but in
Yeah,
terms
listen. Yeah,
it's kind of
I
like,
did not sit down for a while, David. I did
well,
not sit
okay,
down for a while. It was definitely one of those ingrained memories,
right,
but it did
okay,
come from a place of love and safety, right? It wasn't meant to punish me to hurt me, but it was meant to teach me a very valuable lesson,
right,
which my grandfather lovingly taught me. I can count the number of those types of teachings that I've had
right.
on probably one hand, though, because I'm a quick study. It does not take a lot for me to learn a lesson.
And in terms of what was your relationship like later on with your grandparents? So
Um,
you're growing up now to be this wonderful woman. Um, how did it change at all, or did you still have that kind of, oh, I better not leave the cup on the table, or I better not do this, or was there still that kind
no,
of vibe?
yeah, no, it was a very loving vibe.
Mhm.
I literally had my grandparents with me in my life until a couple years ago, like 4 years ago, I would say. And at least the last of my grandparents 4 years ago. So my adult children got to experience their great grandparents, their entire upbringing, which is very unusual. I spoke to my grandparents every week for a
Right,
long time. So I knew that if I was on the phone with him, it was going to be a marathon of a conversation. It was not going to be like, how you doing? And quick and done. It wasn't a quick and dirty conversation. It was more like a 2 hour
right,
conversation. I mean, we covered all the things, right? What's going on in the family, where I am in the world, what's going on with my children, what's going on with me. Oftentimes, I would get a lot of nuggets of wisdom from them based upon the nature of the conversation and the direction that it went. But I looked forward to those conversations. And so I still have a few voicemails on my phone from
no,
my grandparents that I probably will not erase. I go back to because there are days when I need that grounding. Like I think about, I wish they were here. Those are the people that I would have called to kind of talk through certain situations that I may be encountering just because of how fundamental they were and the lives that they lived and the wisdom that they had that they were imparting to me. And so I do miss that aspect of my grandparents
right.
greatly.
And what about then in terms of okay, you're moving on then and you're progressing through life and career and education. So what did you do after that generally? I mean, for the last number of years, what were you actually doing within the say the corporate sector,
Yeah.
certain industries? What were you doing? Tell the listeners.
So when I left when I left high school, I had a few different jobs, right? But the first, I'm going to say the real corporate job was really working as an executive assistant or secretary, depending upon the terminology you want to use. That was like the first time that I had, I'm going to say real benefits.
Okay.
And the reason I say, because I worked in radio a period of time, and that was a fun job working in radio. My job title was traffic manager, and no, I did not report on the traffic.
Okay.
But I scheduled the commercials that interrupt your music or your talk radio, and I did invoicing. But being a part of the team of resources that worked at the radio station, there were certain perks that came with that, right? Um, Concert tickets. If there were private events that was sponsored by the radio station, you got to go to those things and meet a lot of the artists and things of that nature. Having children, Disney on Ice, which was a real thing.
Okay.
Taking your kids to see Disney on Ice and them having like these amazing seats, that was a perk.
All
For
right.
so, you didn't make a lot of money in
Yeah.
radio, but the perks really did make up for it. But when I moved into working in a corporate setting as a secretary, the pay greatly increased. The
Right.
perks definitely reduced significantly. But
So tell me, so Dana, I'm really interested now because this is you've dropped a bomb there, kind of side like, So in terms of how did you get into radio traffic? I mean, in terms of explain that process. Whose door did you knock on to get into there, or did you fall into it, or how did that
I
work?
kind of fell into it. It's one of those things where it's like, who do you know and who do you meet in life? And
Yeah.
I was working a part-time job in this during the census season here, and I was on the night shift, and I met a great team of people. And one of the women that I met at that time, she worked in radio, and she worked full time in this space. And so they had a part-time opening, and I had just I was a mom of two kids at this time, and I was looking to go back to work, but I didn't want to go back to work full time just yet, and I didn't want to drive too far from home, and the radio station was literally 10 minutes from my house. And she's like, hey, we're hiring a part-time person to come in and do traffic. I'm like I, I'm like do traffic, like what do you mean? And and she's like, no, not like actually reporting on the traffic, but scheduling the commercials, doing invoicing and things of that nature. We'll train you. I'm like, I've never done it before, but I'm willing to apply, go through the interview process, and if I secure the job, be trained to do it. And so I went through the process. It was a very short process because they had been without somebody for quite a long time. And
Okay.
they're like, can you type? Yes. You don't live far. No. Okay, can you start today?
You ticked
Like,
all the boxes. Well
I
done.
checked all the boxes. And I learned on the job, and it really was a really cool experience for me. And it wasn't something I was looking for, but it was something I was willing to explore. It was a new opportunity to meet new people, to learn some new skills, and to work in a space that I had never worked in. Who knows where it could have led to? So I did it for a while. And part-time, and then it went full-time, and then I moved to a different station and I did that. And so, yeah.
Well done, you. I mean, it's the thing about it was is that the opportunity came up, and
Mhm.
you could have either gone, no, I don't want this,
Yeah,
and you could have said, this is not for me, and I'll try something else. But you gave it a shot. And did you? I know you mentioned the perks, but I mean, did you really enjoy it?
I did. I really did enjoy just the experience, but also all that I learned about what happens behind the scenes in radio. Like, I get in my car and turn on the radio and listen to it all the time. I had no idea all the things that were transpiring behind the scenes, getting to go into the studio and see all the buttons and all the things that were happening back there that make the show actually come through my car. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, all of this is happening.
Well, it's
Just
an
thought,
amazing experience, though, isn't it?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
wonderful. I mean, and do you think because of that experience that when you mentioned there about the executive assistant role.
Mhm.
Do you then always compare jobs to that position within the radio? Because you want to be happy in your workplace as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
did you find that later on
I
throughout
did. I
your
did.
career?
There were things that I missed about, right, being in that space in that industry. The reason I ended up crazy enough, reason I ended up applying for the executive assistant job, it was a commercial.
Okay. And what
It was
type of
a
commercial
commercial.
was it?
It was a commercial I was running on the station for a job fair.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
had to listen to all the commercials. Um, Part of my job was listening to the commercials, making sure I understood what the keywords were, because then part of the what the report that I would give to the team in the studio, it would not only tell them the number of the commercial, but the outro, what they were looking for, what was the timing on the commercial and things of that nature, so that they could understand how to exit the commercial when to go into the next thing of the show. And so listening to that, and my family at this point was growing, I'm like, I need to go check out this job fair.
All right.
Job fair. And so on my lunch, not only did I go to the job fair, but a couple other people from the station also went to the job fair.
All right.
Uh,
Okay.
and they were doing, we took our resumes, but they were doing on the spot interviews for open roles at the job fair. And I ended up, that's how I ended up getting into financial services. Was I started working for, at the time it was Bank One. No longer, they became, the names have changed over the course of time. But I ended up getting into Bank One as an assistant. So that was how I got into financial services.
That's amazing. I mean, do you think, I mean, the opportunities that came up, do you think that your high school background and your college background helped towards that? Or was it a case of these were opportunities that just came up and you went, oh, look, what the hell? I'm just going to go for it.
I think part of it was really like things that I had learned how to do. Like part of my teenage years was I worked in the summer youth employment program, which was something in my city. And I had an office job as part of that program. Not everybody got an office job. There are a lot of outside work and things of that nature, but I was lucky enough to get an office job because I knew how to type because I learned typing in high school. There were certain things that I took home ec too, but I didn't get a job in a restaurant. But I learned how to type and bookkeeping and accounting and things of that nature in the high school environment. So those were some skills that I knew I had. And what teenage girl doesn't know how to talk on the phone? I mean, come on. I
That's
can
a,
do that.
that's
Right.
a natural ability for your
It's
CV.
natural. It's
Yeah.
innate in us, right? And so those were transferable for me into a lot of spaces because at that time they were looking for, can you type? How many words per minute can you type? I'm like, I actually know I could type, 65, 70 words a minute. Now I'm not sure if I can, what my words per minute is. I at least know I'm not doing it with two fingers.
Just ask AI to do it. Yeah, just type
Yeah,
me up a letter. Yeah.
well, now you can. Like we've come a mighty long way. But those were things in my journey that allowed me to have certain foundational skills that kind of led the way for me.
And the roles, obviously, from being an executive assistant in financial service, but in terms of what was that like? What did you like and what did you not like about that?
So I really did enjoy my role as an executive assistant because I was supporting at one time up to like 10 people. And it was cool because they had different jobs and so I got to do a lot of cool projects. It wasn't just answering the phone and doing travel and scheduling meetings. I got to participate in projects with them. I learned more about the business and the customers that we supported and our products and services and things of that nature. So it exposed me through those projects to even more of what's possible in the space. And I learned through that work that really liked project management. I liked starting with a goal, seeing it through to the finish, and then moving on to something else.
And
So that's
does
how
that
I got into project management.
but does that stick with you now, does it? Do you still have that kind of process? You have to have the
Oh,
goal and
yes,
then okay.
yes, yes.
So I'm going to ask you this interesting question there for anybody that's listening to this podcast. So what about failure? If that horrible word failure, and Dana has this wonderful goal and she wants to fulfill it, and this is her dream or whatever project that she's working on, and it doesn't work out. How do you manage that?
So I'm going to answer this very, very honestly, David. So I will tell you this. Initially, growing up, and what I found in my career, which ultimately led me to burnout, honestly, was a fear of failure, right?
Right.
And in that fear of failure, presented itself in me showing up over functioning. I
Okay.
wasn't just showing up, I was fixing, anticipating, rescuing. I had answers before the questions were even asked of me. And I didn't realize I was for performing from a place of worthiness through excellence.
Okay.
So that is something that, at least now on this side of it, I recognize that the fear of failure was really like a trauma default for me. I didn't want to fail. And so I was doing all of these things to not fail. Now I have the mindset of fail fast, learn the lessons, and get back up and figure it out. Um, it's a very different me now on the other side of having like crashed and burned.
All right.
But that's how the fear of failure really was showing up for me. And it really was affecting, don't get me wrong. I knocked some things out of the park, like really out of the park into another county, sometimes another country, because I was just over delivering beyond what was expected. But when you live that way, you definitely pay a price. Um, I call it the success tax, right? It's the hidden invoice for doing more, giving more, proving more, just to be seen as enough.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I'd like to know, did families or friends make any comments to you during that period to say, okay, she's really gone over the top here. She's kind of, we haven't seen her distress. I mean, physically, were you losing weight? Were you not sleeping? Was there any of this stuff going on, or were you just on kind of autopilot? I'm getting this job done.
So first of all, losing weight, the opposite.
Oh, okay.
I was expanding.
You're expanding. I like the way you
I was
say that. You're
expanding. I was
expanding.
expanding. Not just my work. I personally was expanding. Um, you know, Gaining weight. Definitely didn't sleep a lot at all. Maybe between 2 and 4 hours a night.
Wow. Okay.
White knuckling it, but part of that was I have a half a dozen children, David.
Yeah.
Uh, that I was raising. So, they had homework, they had sports activities. I was going to school at night, getting my master's degree, working full time during the day, doing 8 loads of laundry.
Yes.
Literally 8 loads of laundry. And so there were all the things, and I was juggling all the plates. And when the people in your life get used to you fixing, and taking things, putting the things that should be on their plate onto yours, because
Yeah.
now they've gotten used to you solving their problems, fixing their things. And how dare I say something to you? Because then I'm gonna have to fix my own stuff.
Was it like people pleasing, do you think, as well?
It
Was it
was
some of that?
I, I think it was a matter of, I don't know if I would say pleasing, but I think it was showing them, getting them to a place of reliance on me, right?
Yeah.
This is why I'm of value to you. You need me. These are the things I do for you that no one else does for you, kind of thing.
And what was the light bulb moment when you kind of went, oh, no, I have to look after me now? Because you mentioned there you're doing laundry, you're doing your masters, you're looking
Yeah.
after your kids. Everybody's coming to Dana to sort their problems out.
Mhm.
I've work, I've everything going on. What was the point when you actually kind of went, oh no, I need to look after me now?
Well, honestly, it was one night catching my own reflection in the kitchen window, and I was like, "Who in the heck is that?
All right, okay. And
Who is this? Who's
but
that chick staring back at me?"
how did that make you feel though?
I was really I was really ashamed, and I say that because this is the first time somebody has even asked me how did it make me feel. But when I think back to that moment, catching my reflection and seeing how much weight I had gained and not realizing it, like how did I not see it? And people talk about, having this whole mental block when you are on a weight loss journey where you only see the oversized you. I had never saw the oversized me until that moment. And then I was like gasping and thinking to myself, how did I get here? How did I get to almost 300 pounds. Like round is a shape, and I really was round.
Right.
But I was also camouflaging it with blazers and sweaters, and I knew how to dress to not appear
Right.
the size that I was. But I really didn't recognize myself because of, just being on autopilot and just so focused on making sure all the things were done for all the people in my life that I was taking my health, myself was taking a back seat to everyone else's needs. And I think also as a high achieving, high performing individual, I didn't necessarily think I was susceptible to a thing called burnout. You know, I was tired, yes. Exhausted, yes. But, in my mind, it was, I'll just sleep in on the weekend, right?
Right.
Or something to that effect, just to catch, and the idea of catching up on my sleep, like, that's crazy. I
Because it's
can say
cumulative,
that now.
like when you
Yeah,
lose sleep, it's cumulative, as you know yourself.
it
And every
is.
hour you lose, you're constantly getting fatigued, and
Mhm,
your health, as you mentioned, is reducing. Your brain fog, all
mhm.
this wonderful stuff. But I'd like to know. I mean, what about your, say, your bosses or your team? So, we have your book behind you
Mhm,
there. So,
mhm.
from burnout to badass. So, when Dana
Yeah.
became a badass, did they change their kind of behavior towards you? And they were like, excuse my language here, anybody listening, but did they go, what an asshole? I mean, did it just, you know what I mean? Because you were doing everything for them
Yeah.
and you were supporting them, and all of a sudden you're looking after your own needs, and they're like, hey, look, what's her problem? I mean, how rude is she, or how, why isn't she helping me? Did you get any of that kind of backlash?
Listen, I'll say this as a black woman in the workspace, I'll say it this way. I've always come up against, those types of comments, right? You're too direct. And you're too aggressive. It was
Right.
really more the language. You're too bright, you're too bold, it was always I was too something.
Okay.
Do something for someone else. And I think that that's the other thing, right? For a lot of individuals, if you really think about it, um, they say that, if a millionaire will never tell someone who desires to start a business not to do it or to speak negatively to you, right? And if you have a love for music, an artist is not going to tell you not to pursue that love because they see that joy. But people who basically have no business
Yes.
will always have something negative to say.
Yes.
And my grandparents would always say, opinions are like buttholes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, if that everybody has one.
Yeah.
Everybody has one. And so it's not for me to manage everyone's perception of me, but the most important aspect is for me to manage my perception of myself. People see me how I see myself. And so if I see myself as aggressive, I'm just going to draw more of that. I don't think I'm aggressive. I think I am direct in my communication. Some people may be offended in my level of directness.
Yes.
But it is never my intention to offend. And so I think most people are well intentioned naturally. They don't just wake up and say, I'm gonna be an asshole today. Like nobody does that.
No.
Nobody, at least nobody that I don't believe anyone does that. And so if we think about things in our interactions with people from a place, if we think about it from a place of what do they say? Um, Good intention. Everyone's always coming from a place of good intention. Where we might feel offended and bristled, we probably need to check and go, why do I feel offended in this moment by what they've said to me? Because it's less about what they said or how they've said it, and more about what that triggered within us that may be unhealed.
You've explained it very, very well. And I think if anybody is in the workplace or they're dealing with this type of stuff, do you think a lot of it as well is kind of jealousy? The negativity is there because here's Dana, she's, great personality, brightens up the room, wants to get on with things. And as you mentioned, like, you're going about your stuff.
Mhm,
You're not bothering about other individuals talking about what they're doing. You're doing your stuff. Do you
mhm,
find that's problematic for these other individuals because you're
mhm.
not getting involved with the drama and the nonsense.
Well, I think the thing is you highlight for them, right, what they really want for themselves that they haven't accomplished or been able to bring about in their own life. And instead of doing the self-inventory to understand what they need to change in order to have what it is they desire to have, they misery loves company. They want to bring you to where they are. And you have a choice. And I think every day you have a choice. And oftentimes we don't think that we can choose differently because we're conditioned to want other people to validate and approve the decisions that we've made. And here's the thing, if you feel that that's the best decision for you, then what difference does it make what anyone else thinks about the decision you're making for you?
Yeah,
Who
no,
could who gives two issues about that?
you can say the dirty word if you want.
Oh, okay. I'm like, the Lord loves me and he knows I cuss. Maybe a
This
lot bit.
this is an 18 plus podcast. You're
Okay,
okay.
good.
You
Good,
can
good, good.
curse.
Okay, good, good. I can be my natural self, right?
You can whatever you want to
No,
say. It won't be edited. You're okay.
but that's the thing. It's like you have. I know for me, I've made some hard choices over the years. One of the biggest ones was walking away from a 33-year marriage. No one understood it. No one got it. And everyone had an opinion about it, but no one was living my experience but me.
If you don't mind asking about the walking away, can you define that a bit more? Because if somebody's listening to this, and I mean this with all due
Yeah.
respect, they have this already this opinion or perception, you walked out or you did this or you did that. Um, how how would you explain that to a listener or anybody else that's going through something similar at this moment in time?
Yeah, so one of the things for me, as far as doing my own inner work, my own personal work, was really unpacking my relationships. And I actually do a relationship inventory now on my birthday. It's one of the things that I do for myself. I take time away to really inventory my relationships. Who's in my life? And it's kind of like more of a mathematical thing, right? There's pluses, there's minuses, there's multipliers and dividers, right? And so looking at my relationships through that lens, who's in my life that's adding value? That may be subtracting from the value in my life, the peace, the quality of life, the joy, those types of things. Who's multiplying that? Whose life am I also being a multiplier too? So it's not just one-sided. It's really more, I want to also contribute value in the lives of people who I'm interacting with. Am I doing that? Am I showing up in the way that contributes value that adds into their lives in a positive way? And so that's the inventory that I do. It was hard because I also was looking at my marriage relationship, and the reality was, while I love my husband at the time, I was not in love with him in the same way that I was when I first got married. But also, we had become and evolved and become two different people. And our desires for the future were very vastly different. And in order for that us to continue in a marriage, one of us would have to drastically change and give up what we desired.
Right.
And I, for me, I care too much about him to ask him to be something other than who he is innately and to change and transform himself for me in that way to that degree that would ultimately make him unhappy, and I didn't think that that was fair. But I also didn't think it was fair for me to have to morph myself into something that would not bring me joy and that would not allow me to fulfill my purpose. And so speaking with him and saying to him that I had come to this conclusion and felt that what was in our both of our best interests was to divorce, and I was pursuing that. We were able to divorce amicably. We have uh, six amazing children together, uh, grandbabies, and things of that nature. We're always going to be in each other's life. And so to be able to do that from a place of love and gratitude and know that, the future Mrs. Whoever that comes into his life, she's going to be an expansion of the family that we have, but it's a family that loves each other, that cares for each other, that wants each other to prosper and to grow. We don't necessarily have to be married in order for that to occur.
You've explained that wonderfully again. I mean, especially for anybody going through any relationship difficulties. I mean, how do you think? I know this is just a slight sidetrack from later on what we're going to chat about more, but how do you think you will cope or manage with that if a new lady came into the life? And I mean this not specific to your situation, but in anybody's situation, what would you suggest to them of how to manage that? That you have kind of this, what was this famous word? It was a conscious uncoupling. I think it was Chris Martin from Coldplay, I think, had mentioned a conscious uncoupling, like very peaceful breakup, so to speak. And
Mhm.
you go your way, I go mine, but we still have love for each other and our family. How would you, looking back, if you were looking in to how you dealt with it, what would you tell any individual now of how to manage that situation?
I think you have to be honest with what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, right? I'm not going to say that you won't have feelings, but the reality is acknowledge those feelings, feel the feelings, and unpack them, right? Understand the why behind them so that you can then do the work that you need to do, right? Am I feeling this way because I feel replaced?
No.
Like what's the reason for the feeling?
Yeah.
Because that is what will tell you what the work is and all of that. But for me, I am hopeful that he finds someone that lights him up, right? And that he can do new things with and have new experiences with and grow and flourish with. I am excited for him to have that opportunity. I'm excited for me to have that opportunity. And I think he's excited for me to have that opportunity as well. I see him, he sees me, we are very supportive of all the things that each other is doing and for the right reasons, right? We were together for a long time, very long time, and we've seen each other through our worst and best times and the iterations of our evolution and things of that nature. And so I'm excited for his next chapter, just as excited for my next chapter. So
Why do you think, Dana, and this is just an open question, nothing to do with your
yeah.
personal life or anybody else, why do you think people fall out of love? Because you mentioned the two terms there. You went in love and
Hmm.
love.
Hmm.
So why do you think it changes from in love to love? And why is it difficult to get back into that in love part?
So I would have to say I think that we stopped doing the things that allowed us to fall in love in the first place. I think relationships they're like a garden. They require nurturing, right? You have to take the weeds out. You need to pluck up the weeds. Sometimes those plants need pruning. You need to fertilize and water. And, so it's just like I have begun to do this whole relationship inventory. I think that that's a missed opportunity for a lot of couples where they can really investigate the relationships that are around them, the people that they interact with the most, both individually and collectively, and really look at it through a lens of how are those relationships contributing value in to them as individuals, but also to them as a unit. And what relationships do we as a couple need to move away from because they are no longer serving our best and highest good as individuals or as a collective unit? We don't have those conversations because we're so consumed with the hustle and bustle of doing the things, having the experiences, but living life out loud for the scroll on social, right?
Mhm.
And when what's on your social doesn't align with what's actually happening, we're so, conditioned that it's got to be the right picture for the thing, right? It's got to be the right outfit, the right storyline because we want the likes and all the things versus just living.
Yeah.
And who gives a rat's ass what
Yeah,
somebody else
no. Yeah.
about, my experience. And I mean, for me in my own relationship journey, I didn't post publicly about, the journey that we were going through, but it's interesting that people pay attention.
Yes.
People pay attention, and I would get people like sending me notes or text messages after, on the other side going, I knew you guys were going through something because your timeline changed. Your
Ah,
timeline
okay.
changed, your pictures changed, your posts were more um, thought-provoking, more self-preservation, self-love type of things versus, look at us, we're in Italy.
Right. Okay. But do you think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier on, where individuals are looking for the negativity and they're
They are.
looking for the dirt, so to
They're
speak.
looking for they're looking to kick up dirt. And I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, I still love him. I still want the best for him, but I just know that that's not me
Yeah.
going forward. And if you care about someone, what you want them to have the very best. I want him to have the very best that life has to offer in a partner. I just don't think that I was that partner for him for this next chapter
Yeah.
in his life. And I don't think he was the right partner for me in the next chapter, but I want him to have the right partner.
No, you're I have to say this is like counseling session. It's funny when I do these podcasts. It's amazing when you do speak to guests and their different background and experience that they
Mhm.
have and how they see things and in life and how they manage things. And there's one thing I do realize, there's a lot of consistency when I speak to the guests, and they seem to have some sort of journey where, they've had ups or downs and failures, and this is how now they know how to manage things better rather than having like a plain sailing happy life and all of a sudden, boom, something, really bad happens and they just can't control it.
Mhm.
They kind of crash and burn, as you said. And so you're a great example, anybody out there that, you can have success, especially if you do have burnout. I want to
Mhm.
ask, so we did chat before the podcast started in terms of your approach of tough love. Can you explain what you mean by tough love? So actually, before that, we talked about you're a great supporter of women becoming
Yes.
leaders. So let's talk about that first, and then we can move on then to the tough love part. So what is
Okay.
it that you want to try to inspire women to do and to be like?
I think so. One, I think women are fantastic leaders naturally, right? They carry a lot of, in most cases, a lot of the family weight is on their shoulders because they are orchestrating all the things and making sure everybody gets to where they're supposed to be and has all their needs met. But I think that part of that is they also do that in the workplace and they give very emotionally also to the teams that they're leading. And I don't think that they take enough time for themselves. And so, what I really want to help women do as leaders is to be the best version of themselves, right? To really have the success that they desire, not the success that society told them that they can have.
Yes.
Very different, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that, from when I think about my own journey, I spent a long time measuring success based upon using someone else's ruler
Right.
versus using my own ruler to say, this is what success looks like for Dana. And it's okay that it looks very different from what anyone else would think. Oftentimes, the success that we have in life, we are using someone else's definition of that. I think that every man, woman, right? They, them, however you identify, can have it all. But you get to define what all means. And your definition of all can change as you evolve. And that's okay. There's no wrong answer here. You just have to be willing to be bold enough to go, this is my definition, and this is what it means for me. And then go after that. When I think about old age, you know, I love my grandparents. You know this because we talked about it. And the one thing I learned from them is living a life of no regrets
Yeah.
and to give myself the best opportunity when I get old and gray and I'm no longer working, and I'm sitting on my wraparound porch in my rocking chair.
Yeah.
I can look back on my life
Yeah.
and I can go, I lived my life well. And there's not one thing that I regret. Will I have things that I have learned from that I will learn some very valuable lessons, but those lessons, it's a matter of how I choose to look at them. If I look at them as a negative, that's on me. But if I choose to look at those as opportunities for growth and evolution and resets in life. And so it's all a matter of perspective. You get to choose the perspective, the lens through which you look at those things. And so I want women to understand they don't have to burn the candle at both ends and in the middle to be a great leader. they can be a great leader without burning themselves down, right, to prove their brilliance.
How then, Dana, the reason I ask this is because
Mhm,
I'd be quite similar to yourself in trying to push people. And you mentioned we talk about the tough love thing here.
mhm,
And I say colleagues of mine or pals of mine, it can be kind of a 50-50. Some some will say, oh, too much pressure, you know, they can't handle it.
mhm,
And I kind of go, okay, yeah, but in my mind, I'm trying to motivate them and
mhm,
support them to follow their goals and their dreams. But
mhm,
sometimes they feel that's too far. So
mhm,
I find myself, okay, I step back a little bit. And then when I step back a little bit, they kind of go, well, where did you go? And you're like, no, I've just been here, but you want a bit of space because you feel that I'm kind of pushing too much
mhm.
for you to fulfill your goals and your dreams. How then, especially with women, I mean, how then can you manage that, or how can they manage that when somebody like yourself is trying to give them a little bit of support, guidance, tough love, as we say? And what is tough love
Mhm.
according to Dana?
So tough love, according to Dana, is just being honest, and direct with them. Um, I think for me as a leader, I'll start there. It was important for me to be the type of leader I wish I had always had. And so that meant making time to get to know the individuals underneath my charge, underneath my responsibility, to understand them, like what motivates them, what excites them, what skill sets they have. But more than that, what does their family makeup look like? Because some of them are dealing with younger children, older parents. And so getting to know them allowed me to be able to better lead them.
Right.
And some of them can take a little tougher love, a little more direct language than others, right?
Yeah.
But and you don't know that until you get to understand them and know them from that just seeing them as people place. And I think a lot of times, especially leaders at higher levels within in organizations, they don't take the time to get to know the people. They they know their names, they know what they do for them, but they don't really know them. And I think that that's a missed opportunity because as a leader, if you understand the people that you lead and how to get the best out of them, and if you take care of them properly, the goals, the objectives for the department will always get done beyond your expectation because they feel seen, heard, and understood by you.
Do you think then, Dana, I mean, it's interesting you say that because do you think the power distance now is getting greater between the top and say even the middle work or would you say middle management? I'll say middle workers, but sorry about middle workers out there, whoever you are, but middle management or even lower down the table, the food chain, so to speak. Is the power distance? You've said something that's kind of I think about this quite a lot, where if they just got to know the individual on more of a personal level. I don't
Mhm.
mean every little bit and bob, but just
No,
kind of how are you today? How are things? And even if they're not listening, at least they've asked, and it shows a little bit of compassion and concern because that individual, they'll remember that.
they will. They really will. And I will say this, David, it that was the part of my days that I got most excited about was having that one-on-one time with those individuals where it was not about work. I was very adamant. This is your time with me. You get to pick the agenda. We can talk about anything, travel, sports, what's going on in life, the last book you read. If you want to talk about work, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that is not my expectation. And so I would get excited about those conversations to see what they wanted to talk about. And to hear from a young mom who is like, it's time to take the baby to daycare and how she's excited yet terrified
Right.
to take the baby to daycare. And I could really empathize with that because I'm like, I have kids. I know the feeling. I know exactly the level of anxiety that she has and why she has it. And to be able to talk to mom, woman to woman, and give her, a sense of comfort that this too shall pass. And while the first drop off is going to be traumatic for Everybody.
Yeah.
Baby's gonna cry. You're gonna cry.
Yeah. The teacher's gonna
It,
cry.
the
Yeah.
teacher's gonna cry. Like tears will be shed by all.
Yes.
Is normal. You are not broken. That is normal. It is going to be okay. And day by day, the more consistent you are, the less tears that are going to occur to the point where your kid is going to be wanting to jump out of a moving car because I'm at school. I see my friends. And
Yeah.
you're going to be like, can I get a hug? And they'll be like, bye.
See you later. Yeah.
Right later, toodles. Your days of hugs and me holding on to your leg for dear life are over. You are no longer the most important person in my life, mom. Those days will quickly get over. So to just kind of be able to have that conversation with them and connect with them on that level was really meaningful, I think, for both of us. And I remember, like, out of the blue, I would get an instant message going, it happened. No hug today. And
That's it.
it would make me laugh, but it showed that one, I remembered, and two, they remembered that conversation and felt comfortable enough to share that moment, that intimate personal moment with me. It made me feel connected to them on a human level, not just as a leader. Um, and I think that understanding what motivates them or what hardships they may be going through and managing at home allows you to really be a creative thinker for your organization and build a culture where your people feel supported. It's if their parent is in the hospital and they have young children and they're spending their time between here and there, and the corporate policy is 4 days a week in the office.
Yeah.
They're now feeling this stress and this pressure to how can I be a caregiver to my parent, a caregiver to my child, um, a partner to my, significant other, if I have a partner, right? Because in some cases there isn't a partner, and still meet the expectations of being in the office. I think a lot of leaders have missed, I want to say leaders, companies have missed the mark with the return to office mindset that is getting pushed right now, in the sense that COVID happened. Yes, it was a point in time. It happened. But we also have to remember there are a lot of businesses that didn't survive COVID.
Yeah.
And those businesses or programs supported families pre-COVID in a way that now no longer exists post-COVID.
Yes.
And so now these parents, you're asking them to pick and choose
Yeah.
when they don't have the resources available to them that they once had.
It is, and it's frustrating as well because you do hear a lot. I know in companies now it's all about this KPI performance index and share price and this and that. And, all you want to do is just go to work and do your job. But now everything's been thrown on top of you. If
Yeah.
you don't perform,
Mhm.
this is our profits are probably dropped down. And then you're trying to bring that home to your family. And yeah, it's just a vicious circle.
It
What,
really is. And I think the other thing is, like, there, when you talk about I'm going to say the distance, right? Think about the salaries of those at the upper levels within the company and the resources, the financial resources they have available to them to provide that type of gap and coverage for their own family. So they don't have the same pain points as a middle manager would
yeah,
have, who has limited resources, or even a someone who's entry level or on the front lines. They don't have the financial resources to cover those things in the same way that someone at the upper levels would. And this is probably going to sound very, very, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's going to sound very trivial, but I'm going to say
okay.
it anyway.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
But I'm going to say it anyway, David.
Anyway, go ahead.
I remember being in corporate, and they moved to this whole hoteling type of situation where you now no longer have an assigned desk, but you now come in and you basically, sign a desk out for the day, right?
Okay.
So you never know where you're gonna sit day to day, because now you have to kind of go through this whole registering, signing out desk kind of thing. And but the exact like this is so good. This is a great idea. Well, why aren't you hoteling your office?
Yeah. No,
Your
seriously, yeah.
your secretary in your office never moves. You don't have to wonder if I signed up early enough where there will be a desk for me today. But Bob does.
Yeah.
Bob has to, and Bob is like, oh crap, I've only been in the office 2 days this week. I have to be in one more, and there's no desk for me. Now I have to go through this whole rigmarole to say to my manager, there's no desk for me to sign into, so I can't go into the office. Is that going to have a negative effect on my performance because I didn't meet the KPI of how many times I'm badging in? We're just creating this unnecessary stress for people.
Do you think they care, Dana? I mean, if you think about it, I, I just this is coming from the top, and you just wonder, is it just distraction, just to cause everybody like you and I are talking about this now? Is this, okay? What we do is we throw these little silly situations in that Dana and Dave will talk about on a podcast tomorrow, and they won't talk about the company, and they won't talk negative about anything else, and they'll just talk about this issue. Is this what they're doing? Because it doesn't make sense to me. These are supposed to be business people that went to the top colleges and have experience, and I just don't get it.
Well, I think that sometimes that they assign these types of projects to somebody, right? And it could be an executive who is like, we're trying to bridge you to retirement. So we're going to give this particular assignment to Jody.
Yeah.
Jody, figure it out and tell us what to do, right?
Okay.
Jody's going to come up with something, but Jody is bridging their way to retirement. Jody is not going to have the lived experience of what Jody puts in place.
Yeah.
Why? Because Jody's going to be retired.
Yeah.
So Jody doesn't have any skin in the game in
No.
the outcome.
Yeah. She just
But
wants
so
a pension. She wants her salary every week, and she's not interested about Dana and Dave. Doesn't care.
doesn't
Doesn't
care
care
about
one bit.
doesn't care about Dana and Dave not having a seat, or the fact that Dana really likes that corner
Yeah.
on the first floor that's like 15 steps from the bathroom because she's got a digestive issue, right? Nobody, like, they don't think about these things, and sometimes, like, people are creatures of habit. They just like to feel anchored and rooted. An assigned desk says, I am anchored and rooted here. You value me enough to give me a place with my name on it.
Yeah.
Now I have to like play Russian roulette every day to figure out whether or not I'm gonna have a seat.
Yeah. And the stress already of dealing with that and bringing that
Mhm.
into work. None of it makes sense. Look, let's
That
talk
makes
about your book, Burnout, Too Badass. So, what can listeners expect from this? And give us, kind of an overview of the book, and most importantly, where can you get the book?
So I'm going to start with the last question first. How about that? Because it's
Yeah.
the easy. So you can get the book in a couple of places, right? You can get the book from burnout to badass.com. You can get it there directly, or you can get it from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, and there are a couple of international websites as well that are available within certain local markets. And things of that nature, just to make printing and shipping easier. So it's not as expensive or international. So I'll start with that.
Pass that out of the
Um,
way. Okay.
but as far as the book is concerned, it's a journey. Really talking about burnout and some of the things that the signs of burnout that you may not necessarily recognize. Some of the things that contribute to that, even from a cultural background, upbringing perspective that we never really think about and how those things show up. Different tools are provided to help you when you identify yourself in it. How do I now take these things that you've talked about that I can do and apply them to my life? So lots of tools have been provided throughout the book. Lots of reflection questions at the end of each chapter. So it's not just gonna spew a lot of stuff at you.
Okay.
It's also going to give you an opportunity to pause and reflect. and think about how that particular chapter applies to you, whether or not you are on a scale, within this particular chapter, how far gone am I? Or I'm knocking it out of the park. This chapter doesn't apply to me. If it does, there are resources that are available directly in the book. There are some downloads that you get with the book as well. But then, I over deliver again, David. I felt that there were more resources that I wanted to make available, and my publisher was really, I should say, my what does she call a developmental editor, not a publisher, my developmental editor. She was like, "We are not going to put a 300-page book out in the universe."
All right. Most people's attention span is probably 5 minutes anyway, most of the
And
time.
so, additional resources are available in a supplemental workbook as well. But do you need the work? You don't absolutely have to have the workbook, no. But if you want the workbook, it is available because there are additional resources that can really help you on your journey to getting back to being your badass self, or to just getting to being your badass self. Because I think that all of us have an inner badass. Really, I do.
And did you have, when the book was completed, did you feel a lot of pride?
I did.
You
I
did.
did. I did. And I kind of shared this in our pre-chat, right? I was speaking with a developmental editor about publishing a second it an advanced copy, a new edition of my first book, The Fix, Focus and Intentional Execution, the 7 steps for climbing the corporate ladder without uh, neglecting your health or sacrificing your family. But as I'm having this conversation with her, she kept redirecting me, like, I want to hear more about your crash and burn. I want to hear more about I'm like, not what I called you for. But it's through that conversation that she really inspired me to kind of share my journey of recovery from burnout, one, recognizing it, and then getting back to um, getting not even back to better than I was before that. And so it was through that conversation that she encouraged me. And I was like, okay, I can take that journey to sharing that story and sharing some stories of folks that I've encountered on my journey that I've worked with either through a mentoring perspective, coaching, things of that nature, and their journey, where they were, and how we work together to get them to a better place.
And the coaching, you mentioned the coaching there. So I'm being nosy here on your website. I have danalcox.com, and you have your services, you have your blog, you have contact information. In relation to the coaching, how does that work?
So I do group coaching, but I also do one-on-one coaching. There are times when I do events as well. My website I'm working through a whole redesign, David, because I don't think it's badass enough.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, it is a lovely website. It really, really
I
is.
appreciate it. There are some certain things that I feel like are I've gone through a journey as an entrepreneur, and so I think that it's time for my website to go through a journey, an upgrade, if you will, as well, because I have some courses that are coming out soon, as well. So some digital products that are making it available, because sometimes people want to do things on their own, but with a little
Yeah.
bit of support, and not necessarily with a whole lot of support. So I want to make sure that I'm providing those types of resources as well. So those will be dropping here soon. But people can schedule a call with me. I'd like to have a conversation, understand their current situation, what their goals are, and then share with them, how I could support them in accomplishing those goals. And if they determine that we are a good fit, because it's also about making sure not just me, providing a service, but they need to feel like I'm the right person to help them on that journey. And if through that conversation that is determined, then I share with them the couple different ways that we can work together and what the investment would be for those.
And are these coaching sessions, are they one in terms of one-on-one, I mean, like in person all the time, or do you deal with everybody around the globe?
I, I deal with everybody around the globe. That was one of the things about being a global executive. I know a little something about managing all those time zones. Uh, working across all the continents. And so and it is the thing that I do enjoy. I do really enjoy working and supporting people from different backgrounds and things of that nature, because I do think that oftentimes we feel alone and we haven't necessarily found our tribe exactly where we're planted, but your tribe exists. So yeah, no boundaries as far as that is concerned. We can do those things virtually. I do like to try to get to other spaces and places physically. And so one of the things that I'm really working on is what are some in-person events that I can do in the places where the people who are most connected to me are.
You're a very intelligent lady, Dana. You're very, very clever. And I think your life experience will help other individuals that may be stuck in certain parts of their own life. And I think you can help solve a lot of puzzles. Where is the best place that somebody can get in touch with you? Other than the website, are you on all the LinkedIn's, the Facebooks?
Yeah.
Are you dancing on TikTok yet, or what's going on?
I have not started dancing on TikTok. I think my adult children are terrified that I might start one day.
You should.
I like to dance, so I don't know. I've not promised them that I won't,
Okay.
but I haven't gone to that lengths yet. So a couple things that I will be doing, David, is I'll share this with you and your audience. So I'm going to be doing a little more going live, and just really kind of sharing some key points with those that are connected with me right now, as in making sure that they have some key takeaways that they can take. So whether it's the topic of, fear of failure, or how to get positioned properly to kind of be the most sought after, or whatever the topic may be, and what people want to hear about that is within my wheelhouse, I will open that up for people to share with me what they want me to talk about, so I can go live and just kind of share some wisdom and give some value, to the people right where we are.
And it's been a joy chatting to Dana today on the Wellbeing Cripple podcast. I'm looking at you on the camera here, and you bring. I honestly I hate saying this type of stuff because it sounds really corny, but you bring great life to the camera and you're very positive vibes, and it really does come across. And I think when listeners, not so much the audio version, but the video version as well, they will see a very positive person chatting today. And I think you will be a great asset to anybody or any company or organization to inspire individuals or staff members. So also let me say thank you so much to Dana Elcox for chatting on the Wellbeing Career podcast. And once a podcast has been approved and released, you'll be able to listen to it. Thanks so much, Dana.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate you sharing your platform with me and chatting with me. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
My pleasure. Do you know what it is? I was watching the time, and listeners can laugh at this, but we've actually ran over the time by nearly 20 minutes because we've been chatting so much, and it's been just a natural flow of conversation. So if any listeners are wondering, I'm chopping it off here just so I can have Dana on again, chatting down the road when she progresses throughout her career. So thanks so much, Dana.